All right, so one of the things about AWS reInvented is jam-packed full of announcements. In fact, there's so many announcements that it doesn't even fit into this week. There's about 2 weeks ahead of time and a couple weeks afterwards where announcements keep trickling out. One of the biggest source of announcements was Andy Jassy's Day 1 keynote. And while we were waiting for Werner Vogels' Day 2 keynote, I did a quick recap live from the MGM Trend Micro Lounge to bring people up to speed, maybe kill some time while they were waiting for Werner to take the stage. But I talked about what we saw on Wednesday and what we might be seeing on Thursday.
Again, you've got space to your hypothesis, okay? All right, but just so you know the way this is the obvious type of video. So OTS stands for over the shoulder, that's the graphic here.
Good morning. Perfect. Let's just double check that this is tweeting out so that everybody can jump in. You're all downstairs in line waiting for the Day 2 keynote. It is absolutely insane down there. I am up on the 3rd floor here at the MGM Lounge. Micro Lounge, grabbed in a little early. The lounge doesn't open until after the keynote. I know somebody, so I was able to sneak in a little bit, and I wanted to talk to you guys about what was announced yesterday, because after the keynote and after a crazy day on Wednesday, I hit the wall hard, took my own advice, grabbed a bit of a power nap that turned into an extended power nap, but after that I popped open the AWS Management Console and started playing around with some of the brand new services that I hadn't yet gotten access to. Wanted to share some of that experience with you guys and recap some of the crazy stuff that we heard at Andy's keynote. Can only believe, there's so much jammed in Andy's keynote. What's coming today? What is Werner going to talk about? Because traditionally, it was the 1-2 punch with Andy coming out talking about the business, doing some customer case studies, and then announcing some of maybe the sexier services. Werner normally follows that up with a highly technical keynote, something more, a lot more technical detail, a lot deeper dive. But Andy got really deep technically yesterday, so I'm not quite sure what's coming today, and that's pretty exciting. But yesterday, we had a ton of great announcements. We talk about the container announcements, so EKS, the Managed Kubernetes Service. This is fantastic. It reduces the burden on running containers, running Kubernetes at scale, because AWS is going to handle all that. Every EKS deployment goes across 3 availability zones. So with 3 availability zones kicking around, you are going to have a really stable and reliable control plane. And really that's what it is. As soon as you add Kubernetes to your container deployment, now that's a critical piece of infrastructure. And you're running that. That's a lot of overhead. Now with EKS, you can just offload that to AWS and just enjoy the benefits, enjoy the advantages of that. So huge. And I think, for enterprise customers, that's massive, but for all customers, AWS Fargate is really exciting. So this is essentially what we've always wanted for a container. It's the service where we give AWS a container to find a couple parameters around it saying, I need this much memory access, maybe this much CPU, and here's the network addressing things that we need to require, and then we're all good from there. So we can keep going and just checking the stuff that's running in the background here. You can go from there and your container just runs. So instead of managing an orchestration layer, Fargate is simply, here's my container, run it and let me know if there's any issues. That's great, fantastic stuff. And we saw a lot of great advancements on the database side, on the data storage side. So we got some great upgrades to DynamoDB. We got global tables. We got backup and restore coming shortly. But really exciting and really kind of stood out for me was 2 things. Neptune, which is a fully managed graph database. And I think that's extremely exciting. Now, I know a lot of folks don't have a huge amount of experience with graph databases, but for the appropriate problem, that's a big caveat, for the appropriate problem, graph databases are insanely useful. These are amazing tools, and really it comes down to having nodes and relationships among those nodes and being able to store that and query across that. So it's a really, it reduces graph problems. It's an entire branch of mathematics, but think of like social graph or relationships among your data. Sure, you can do that in a traditional relational database. It's called a relational database for a reason. But for really complicated ones, so instead of just one-to-one relationships, going for complete graph analytics, graph database, ironically enough named, is really useful. So that's the new Amazon Neptune service. It's currently in preview. You can sign up to get on that now. And then really exciting was the Aurora changes. I was quite surprised at how far they went. So they went Aurora Multi-Master, fine, great, that was kind of expected, but serverless Aurora. What the heck? crazy. So serverless Aurora is the idea of it's not sitting idle. So it's still all the great same interfaces that you're used to programming against, all the amazing benefits of Aurora performance-wise. And if you're not familiar with those, you should actually read the white paper on Aurora. There's a lot of really crazy innovations that they've pushed through. Obviously, MySQL and Postgres compatible, but now in a serverless way. So you don't pay for idle, scales up as required, scales down when you're not needed. So it's an interesting option for your serverless designs now. Instead of just purely relying on Dynamo or on an S3 static backend, you get the choice with Aurora. So it's definitely worth checking out. But one of the things I really wanted to dive in deep while we're waiting here, we got about 25 minutes before Werner's keynote kicks off. I am not going to keep talking for 25 minutes. Don't worry about that. But what's important, I think, was all the advancements in ML and AI. And they brought back Dr. Matt Wood. Matt's phenomenal, but it's really, really challenging for a lot of folks to kind of get the depth or the impact of really what Matt's talking about. So he does a great job of delivering it, but when he's talking about how P3 instances have been optimized for 32-bit floating point, and we've pushed back in the optimization on the new NVIDIA cores and all this kind of stuff, if you're not deep into this tech, that doesn't really resonate necessarily. That doesn't, you don't understand the full impact of what he's saying, because basically what he's saying is they've looked at all the most common use cases, so 99% of people's use cases around machine learning, and they've done hardware and software optimizations in their infrastructure in order to make that stuff lightning fast. That's absolutely critical. Now, they've launched a few services around this, some really high level that you can take advantage of right away, things like recognition video. That's great. It was a natural extension of taking recognition from images and extending that out into videos. That's wonderful. Super easy. Just basically send it a video or stream it a video, and it's going to start to tell you what's in there. But far more important, and I'm just checking my notes here, far more important is SageMaker. SageMaker, I was talking to a couple people last night at some of the events, and SageMaker is really sort of a Trojan horse, or not so much a Trojan horse, I guess is not the right word for it, is an insanely powerful workflow that you don't have to worry about how much technology and advancements it's hiding. So it's displayed on the keynote with a couple icons, and I was super excited, but also like, wow. People just go, oh, it's basic, it's not that involved. Well, I've been working with that kind of deep learning, machine learning tech for over a decade now, and the amount of heavy lifting you need to do just to get it up and running to the point where you can feed it data into a model so that you can start to get results out of it was ridiculous. You were spending at least half your time maintaining the infrastructure. SageMaker blows that all away. It's pivoted around the concept of a Jupyter notebook, and I've got an explainer video that I'll tweet out after this explaining what a Jupyter notebook is, but essentially it's a way of packaging up your code, your data access, some analytics, and explanation as to what you're doing to pass it around. You can pass it around to your colleagues, or in this case, you can pass it to SageMaker, and SageMaker is then going to execute that workflow. And you can do that in parallel and do what with the Autodesk folks were talking about on Tuesday night, which is sort of that generational design, so that you can run multiple models in parallel and then get one result at the end. This is an insane boost in productivity when it comes to model creation, model tuning, and simplicity in it. It's really going to make this accessible for a lot of folks, and I look forward to sharing how to do that with you guys. I've got a series coming out. It'll probably be coming out first in January, where I'm going to walk through what that means and how to start building machine learning models, how to collect and normalize your data with the AWS services, and push that all through. Look for that on my social channels on Medium, because I think that's really going to help a lot of people take advantage of that power, because SageMaker is just wonderful as far as making that accessible. Ton of other little announcements in the keynote yesterday, but I think those were the big ones. You're looking at Fargate, you're looking at SageMaker, crazy stuff going on there. I don't know what's coming on today. So we saw cool new hardware yesterday with Deep Lens as far as pushing machine learning models right into a little camera, so that you have that accessibility. I love the demo with the camera and the album and a smile or a frown, and that was kind of the review. Even just that concept alone, there's a lot of crazy stuff that you can expand out on. But today, Werner, obviously at the end of his keynote, we're going to find out who's playing the replay party tonight, which is normally a really positive, but for the hour and a half or 2 hours he has us before then, what's he going to talk about? We covered containers, we covered machine learning, we covered data storage yesterday in Andy's keynote. What's out there still? I'm thinking probably some flow tools, maybe developer experience stuff, maybe. I don't know, honestly. There's so many services now. We're up to over 110 AWS services. We're going to be probably closer to 120 after this keynote, so later this morning. What is going to be out there? I'm up in the air. What do you think? Hit me up on Twitter at MarkNCA. Let me know what your guesses are. What do you think Werner is going to talk about today? What are you most excited about? What do you hope he talks about today? Because remember, even if he's not talking about it on stage, there's a ton of other stuff that gets announced. So post keynote yesterday alone, we saw WAF partner rules got announced in the middle of the day, and it was in session and then a blog post. So this is where a select number of partners, Trend Micro one of them, provide rules for AWS WAF. So single click install, and you're using professionally designed security rules in your WAF deployment. Fantastically useful. They launched NTP as a service last night. It was like a 6:30 p.m. blog post that they just fired out and said, oh yeah, by the way, we do NTP as a service now. I'm just looking for the actual name here. Yeah, the time sync, Amazon time sync service. That went out last night. Randall had a great post on that. Again, not a super glamorous service, but insanely useful. You can now have one single source of truth for time, which is the Amazon time sync service. So keep your eye out. Obviously, the big announcements are coming out on the keynote. I'm going to be live tweeting the keynote, but look at the AWS blog. So aws.amazon.com/blogs. You're going to be able to see everything that's going on there. I'll try to keep you tuned in, but hit me up on Twitter at MarkNCA. Let me know what you think. Let me know your best guess for what Werner's going to be talking about today, and send me your questions. Happy to try to answer them. I've been working with the AWS teams as part of the Community Hero program to understand this tech, how best you can leverage it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So have a great keynote. We got about 15, 16 minutes before things really get rolling. Enjoy the show. Remember, another day full of lines. Be patient. Talk to the people around you. We're all here for the same stuff. On the bright side, you're about to have a massive shared experience with 45,000 other folks, so you definitely have something to talk about. I'll see you guys later on at the show. Take care.